Hey guys, VEDA number 16, I want to say. Yeah, 16, because we're one behind. And this is the second time I'm attempting to record this video, because I just recorded it, and it wasn't particularly good. It was extremely rambly. I didn't quite have my thoughts together. But before we do that, two items of housekeeping. Number one, George Sleeth, your game is going to be shipped off tomorrow. He has chosen his game. He chose game A, I want to say. And I've got to get up a bit earlier in the morning if I want to trick old George Sleeth. He guessed one of the games straight away. So yeah, he chose the other one, so we'll wait to see which one that is. I'm going to reveal what that is a bit later. So I'll be shipped off tomorrow. And two, somebody asked me in the comments today if I had a Discord. And no, I don't. I don't have a Discord. But I would be willing to make one up. I have a friend who knows all about Discord, and yeah, so I can have one made if I thought people would actually join it. So yeah, is there anybody out there who would even consider joining and engaging with Keith Shizuo Discord, although it might not be called Keith Shizuo, but we will get into that at a later date. So yeah, those are the two items of housekeeping. I don't think there's anything else I need to say. Apart from, I got a massive PS2 haul the other day. Some really good stuff. So yeah, it'll be a great pickups video later this week. Easter pickups video, indeed. And I can stop fidgeting with this bloody necklace. Anyway, I need my fidget spinner back. I was just as a point and just a reminder. Yeah, I was watching the my girlfriend put on the AVGN Game Boy accessories video from back in 2017, and that freaking thing you do with that fidget spinner right at the beginning. Oh man, what a way to end a trend. Although not quite as explosive as the way I killed the big Chungus meme in my video with Rakiru. If you haven't seen that, yeah, go check that out. But anyway, my VEDA today I wanted to be on game difficulty, because yesterday Jim Sterling released his 29-minute video essay on the Dark Souls problem. Because that's what it is, the Dark Souls problem. This argument started with Dark Souls, and now it's probably going to end one of these days with Dark Souls. And that is, should Dark Souls have an easy mode? That's the way they mask the question. Anyway, that's the way they mask the question that they're really trying to ask. Because if they tried to ask the question in the way it really should be asked, the answer would be obvious. But I'll get back to that later. Now, a point I came up with on the fly was that I'm actually pretty proud of. I'm going to start up again. I'm going to say again here, and that is that. How did game difficulty as a thing come about? When you think about it, when video games started, discounting things like the Odyssey and that, because that's a bit of a different kettle of fish. Video game difficulty, if you start with the first real video game, the game people consider the first one, Pong, not Tennis for Two, more Space War, Pong, doesn't have any difficulty. And by that I mean, you have the most fluid possible control. It's an analog control system, completely analog in most cases, or damn near analog in others, and an input in, as long as you've got a good quality controller, will directly and trying to think of a word, relatively affect what is happening on the screen. So it is a completely skill-based game. There's no inherent difficulty in it. There's no way to increase that difficulty. There would be no way for people to increase the difficulty, because you're against a second person if there was a computer involved yet. But then when you got into the the later 80s, the mid to late 80s, you started getting things like the PC 50X machines. I have a PC Dick Smith branded PC 50X machine over there. No, mine's not Dick Smith. Mine is different company that I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, it's PCX 50X machines, which will be a VEDA of itself at one point. The rarest video game on the internet. It's not what you think. But they have a Pro-Am switch for each paddle. Now, one of them doesn't work on mine, but the theory is that you can switch between Pro and Am for each paddle, and it's a handicap. You know, you can make one player smaller or larger with the paddle size. And so difficulty initially started off as a way to, handicap players and make games more interesting. When you think of it, all the old arcade games, in pre-console days, and even in the early console days, difficulty was almost determined by how good the game was. If a game was easy, or at least if it could be played easily in some regard, like at some little level, then it was considered a better game than the hard games. Hence why E.T., a very hard game to even understand, was considered a very poor game. And something like Kaboom, which is an extremely simple game to understand, an extremely simple game, again, with that direct analog control in its early levels, is considered a very good game. Just if I can think of a couple more examples on the Atari, because I think that will do a great thing to prove my point. What are some good Atari games? Adventure, again, a very simple game, relatively easy game. Pac-Man, despite having a winning game formula, it is executed in a very poor-looking way, and also in a relatively difficult-to-play way, therefore making it a bad game. Difficulty was directly related to quality back in the day, and in fact, that is how I saw games in my early gaming life, growing up, playing the odd game of Mario Kart 64 on my cousin's N64, and indeed playing a lot of different racing games, and definitely shooting games on the Xbox, not the Xbox, the PS2. I was rubbish at shooting games, and I was rubbish at Ratchet and Clank, so therefore I just assumed it was that I was too bad for it. Even though, looking back at Ratchet and Clank, there are a lot of poor design decisions. And I would go as far to... Look, if I hadn't played as much of the PS2 library I can, and hadn't had my standards lowered so far by its mediocrity at some points, I would go as far to say that the original Ratchet and Clank is a 6 out of 10 at best. I'm hiding from the snipers now that people have sent out towards me. But, it's true, but that said, after having played some of what the PS2 has to offer and getting an idea of what really bad games are and what really mediocre games are, yeah, I definitely put it at a 7 or an 8, just on the writing alone. But that maybe is an argument for a different day. I'd love to hear your opinions on that on the description. But by the time we started getting to... the first game to really big up on its difficulty as a feature, as a challenge to complete, apart from puzzle games and brain teaser games. The first game I could really think that tried to hype up on its difficulty, that I can think of, I might be wrong, was Daikatana, John Romero's game. A game famously derided and pretty much forgotten. It's pretty much just a box cover to a lot of people now. At least with E.T., everybody knows the basic gameplay. Daikatana, could you even tell me basically what it is if you hadn't played it? No, it's completely lost to the culture. If you haven't picked that game up, if you haven't watched a review, you don't know what that game is. And that's partially because of some of its difficulty, or that did have an easy mode. And speaking of that, we come to the one that really started it all. The one that really made people... scared of its difficulty? I think that's the right word to use. Scared of its difficulty was Dark Souls. Because that's what people were. They were scared of its difficulty. And beating it brought a relief from that fear. And the question people ask, does Dark Souls need an easy mode? Does Sekiro need an easy mode? Does Demon Souls, Bloodborne need an easy mode? Obviously not. Obviously not, because it's a free freaking country. That's why. There is a lot of artistic credibility that can be lent to. There's a lot of artistic exploration that can be aided by the fact that video games, you can, with a simple changed number in a text file somewhere deep in the game's code, change the difficulty. It's easy. If you want to make any other piece of media difficult to consume, you need to be a literal literary genius. Apart from just being ridiculous, like making a painting extraordinarily small, or using but you need to be a genius to say make something like David Lynch film, if I'm thinking of the correct director, or using extremely over the top and complex and difficult language in a novel. You need to be a literal genius to do that. A literal, actual, bona fide literary genius, but you don't need to do that with games, and that can help represent, futility of existence, nihilism, the difficulty of rising in the corporate system, in life, the fact that you don't get you don't get out what you put in life. There's all these things which can be represented through the basic concept of difficulty, if a game should choose to do that. I'm not saying that all difficulty represents those, but it's certainly an avenue that you can explore in games with this mechanic that you can't as easily do in other media. So yes, there is definitely, if it is your artistic vision for a game to be difficult, to show that struggle, yes, there is a reason why that difficulty can exist, and no, Dark Souls does not need to do that. It definitely plays with some of those themes in some ways. I wouldn't know exactly. I haven't actually played the game before. I gave my copy of I sold my copy of Demon Souls to my friend without ever playing it, and I don't intend to play it. It just doesn't really look like my jam. I've got plenty of other games to play, see VEDA, whatever, like ages ago, on why I don't play modern games. But that's the point for not having a difficulty. The point against not having a difficulty, it's inherently exclusionary. The classic example, which I'm not a particular fan of, because I think it undermines some of the idea of interactive entertainment, or at least interactive entertainment where an amount of skill is required to progress in any way. That is, the whole idea of what is, but it is a valid idea. It's like, there's no book that's going to, freaking stop you from reading every 5 pages and quiz you on what's happening and your ability to comprehend the story. It's because that would be stupid in a novel, but it wouldn't be stupid in a book, in a game. I don't know. Like, even that mechanically directly, where they stop you at a point and they say, okay, how many freaking green stones were there in the level? You got to say how many green stones, or they boot you back and then they ask you a different question. Now, that's a valid mechanic. I can see that working, in a more skillful hands than I. But it is inherently exclusionary to have only a heavy difficulty. Back in the early days of arcade. Well, not the early days, but the golden days of arcade, or the silver age. I don't know if we have defined ages of arcades. Difficulty was a toggle. It could be physically changed by the arcade machine owner to say how difficult the game was, for the arcade owners to gauge how much money people were willing to spend to progress. And if they weren't willing to spend as much, they make it a bit easier to entice more quarters, or as we say, 20-cent pieces out of the player. Or if you knew that they were big spenders, you take the difficulty up and you rake more in. That was what difficulty was. Now we're faced with a situation where they have just decided on a game to be difficult. I don't want to say just because I did just say the stuff about the stuff, but let's just say, for example, just because. Again, something like Daikatana. But even then, Daikatana had a fucking easy mode. John Romero may have made you his bitch, but, he still gave an easy mode to that. Probably because you freaking had to. But, the question is, should Dark Souls have an easy mode? That's not the question, is it? That's not the question. The question is that they want to ask, that they've been trying not to ask, because it would make the answer obvious. Should Dark Souls be allowed to have an easy mode? That is the question people are asking. Let's face it, the question of, should Dark Souls have an easy mode has never been, should Dark Souls have an easy mode? Or at least if you have been asking that question, you've been doing it all wrong. The question has always been, should Dark Souls be allowed to have an easy mode? And when you put it like that, the only possible answer is yes. There is no... There's no argument for no. You can't say, no, it shouldn't be allowed to have an easy mode. I don't know, that's like saying, freaking no, Han Solo isn't allowed to fly the Millennium Falcon. I'm trying to think of a better example than that. But what's something that's cultural in movies, Blair? No, I can't actually think of anything as significant, frankly, because Dark Souls really is a pivotal thing in game culture, really. Should FromSoft games be allowed to have an easy mode? The answer is, of course, yes, they should be allowed. Yes, they should be allowed, or they want to or not is an entirely different matter. But at that point, and even if you want to approach this from a very serious angle of, would Dark Souls become less if it had an easy mode? Really no. Because, the people who want to play Dark Souls are going to play it in hard. And hell, for freaking donkey's years, any game I can point to on my shelf over there, on my shelf of PS2 and Xbox games from freaking 2000 to 2007 up there. Any of those freaking games which have a hard mode, have an easy mode. Do you know what happens? You don't get all the game unless you play it on hard. You can beat the game. You can see all the story. You can get all the levels. You can do all... Well, you can get normally all the levels in most cases, but you can get all the levels. If you play the game on higher difficulties, if you work your way through the higher difficulties, you get rewards, be it cosmetics, be it in the case of Black on the Xbox and the PS2. That is a brilliant example for what I am talking about. You cannot start at the highest difficulty on that. You are presented with easy, normal, and hard. Okay? You got to beat the game on... you got to beat the previous level on a certain difficulty level to unlock that difficulty level in the next level. Okay? You beat all the levels on hard, then you get extra... Then you unlock Black Ops difficulty. You beat all the levels on Black Ops, you unlock new weapons, and you unlock a special weapon at the end. And do you know what your reward is? Do you know what your reward at the end of Black is on the PS2 and Xbox? Your reward for beating the game's highest level of challenge. And indeed, for most of these games, do you know what your reward is? For Ace Combat, for example. I just realized this, and I find this freaking hilarious, the whole Dark Souls thing. Do you know what your reward is for beating all of these games? And do you know what the most rewarding is? I've been stringing this out too long. Sorry, I'll get to the point very quickly. But the reward for beating the hardest challenge, for being the best you can possibly be at the game, and what a lot of people regard as some of the best completionist rewards in all of video gaming. Well, hell, even if you want to get to the end of freaking Pokemon, you know what your reward is? In Black, your reward for beating the entire game in Black Ops difficulty is the M16A2, which is an infinite ammo, fully automatic, I think, one or very few shot kill assault rifle with the only underslung grenade launcher in the game with infinite grenades, or practically infinite grenades, that will make mincemeat of any level in the game. That used to be your reward for beating challenge. The game becomes extremely easy. You unlock something. You unlock the best plane in Ace Combat. You unlock the best race car in the game. You unlock Timmy in friggin' South Park Racing with the maxed out stats. You unlock the secret races in Lego Racer or Crash Team Racing. You unlock the gold carts in Mario Kart 8. It still happens today, and yet that was always your reward, it becoming easier. And I just find that funny with the whole Dark Souls thing. But I will make one closing statement, because my video, despite having less awkward pauses and loose threads that go everywhere, is the same length as Dark Souls. Not Dark Souls, friggin', as the last video did. But I'd just like to say this. Resident Evil 4 is a game that has 2 difficulty modes, normal and hard. I wonder how many people would notice. Because this has happened before. It's happened before and people didn't notice. People are completely duped. If the next Dark Souls, the next Demon Souls came out, and it had 2 difficulty modes. It had, your Dark Souls mode and your hard Dark Souls mode. What if the normal mode was the equivalent of a easy mode now, and the hard mode was just as hard as it had always been? You know what? Someone would notice, because people would go over it with a fine-tooth comb, but I wonder how many people, if you didn't tell them, how many would notice? Something to think about, I suppose. So yeah, that's been VEDA 16. I'll try and get us back on track soon, so you might get another double day coming out soon. If you have any ideas for VEDAs in the future, please comment down below. If you think a Keith Shizuo Discord is something you could be active in, please comment down below. And I have a Patreon you can support. Thank you to my 3 patrons Random Killer 563 something or other. Those numbers in some order: Daniel Craig and George Sleeth, whose game is about to be in the mail. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me with that. That will probably help pay someone to put up a Discord, because why not? Please tell me what you think about the idea of difficulty levels in games and customize. I wanted to go on a bit about customizable difficulty, but that's a whole other kettle of fish, and that's action replay stuff, and I don't have enough time in this video. I've already gone on long enough. So yeah, I will see you guys for the next VEDA. Laters, boys.